transparency and accountability levels that we're hoping to get to. I'm going to ask Mr. Leach, our CAO, to just make a comment regarding some of the challenges that others are having with these virtual meetings and transparency and accountability and the findings that are coming out of other regional districts. So I'm just going to turn it over to Mr. Leach.
Okay, thanks. So just on the heels of what Director Lee's motion was, there's a CEOs group of all the regional district and Muni CEOs dealing with the same issues about involving the public in technology, and there is many local governments that do not have the technology right now to broadcast to the public. So the consensus is that if we don't have the technology to broadcast to everyone, then we shouldn't be individually broadcasting to people, let's say, in our house. So it was just kind of a consensus that the local governments that don't have the technology, which is the majority of them, until we have the technology that's up and running, that all the public can listen and view our meetings, is that nobody should have anyone in their house or in the background listening or recording the meetings. It is not in camera, I know that, but if you make it available to a couple individuals in your home, then you're not making it available to other individuals. So it's if we can do it for everyone, we'll do it, and that's what we're working towards. Based on what the chair said, getting our technology in here. And until that point, we should probably limit it professionally just to the people involved in the meeting.
Thank you very much. Director Anderson, you have a question?
Thank you. Just following up to my questions yesterday in my email, and thank you, Chair, for your kind response. I completely understand that we're in totally new territory, and that inviting the public to participate live in these meetings or view live in these meetings is something that we haven't figured out how to do yet. But I would like to know if it's possible to take the recording of this meeting and then post it so that anybody could have access to it thereafter. Thank you.
I can answer if you want. We technically have the ability. So Mr. Schmulin told me that you're correct in recording this meeting. It records the audio and the video. Again, I asked the question amongst the CAO group if anybody's doing that, and nobody was. So if we were to do that, let's say attach a recording to the minutes, that would have to be a decision of the board. But I couldn't find anybody that was actually doing that. Not certainly in their first couple meetings, as everyone's trying to get their feet underneath them.
Okay,
so I would love to make that motion if that was appropriate at any point, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, if at this point my chair's report is on the floor, so I will leave that to the board.
The chair's report and the CAO's report.
Yeah, thank you, Director Lee. And a seconder, please.
Martin, second.
Thank you, Director Davis. I'll call the question. All those opposed? I will call that carried. Director Anderson.
A point of order, Madam Chair. Under public considerations, I already had a motion carried that staff bring back a report regarding when and how to incorporate the public into our meetings. Currently, yes. we have printed minutes and minutes available on our website soon after the meetings are over, and the staff can report. That's why I put that motion forward right at the beginning, because I knew this was going to be otherwise dealt with in a long-winded appeal to get things out to some people and not to others. So I just wanted to put that to bed right at the beginning of the meeting. So I think that any discussion now is out of order because the staff have already been directed by the board to bring back a report on how to incorporate the public.
Thank you. CAO Leach.
Thanks. So just trying to follow some of our procedures, and I know this is our first meeting. One of them was that we were not going to do motions on the chat. So if we had a motion, it would be a notice of motion. Of course, that's up to the chair. But I think we want to discourage using the chat for motions. And that's why we asked and appreciate Director Lee emailed in her motions yesterday. So if Director Anderson has a motion, I think it's up to the chair, but I believe we should consider it a notice of motion. I think it's a little bit dangerous if we start doing notice of motions via the chat.
I agree. Thank you very much. And Director Anderson has said, yes, she will consider it a notice of motion. So we will consider that in the minutes as a notice of motion. Thank you very much, Director Anderson. I have nothing on the consent calendar. On to the committee chair reports. If I could get somebody to move the electoral area services meeting minutes, please.
So moved. Brenda
Thank
Lee.
you, Director Lee. Director Unger, thank you. Is there any discussion on receipt? Seeing none. All those opposed? I'll consider that carried. Thank you. On to number 2, Strathcona Gardens Commission. If I can get somebody to move receipt, please.
So moved, Martin.
Thank you, Director Davis. Second.
Second, Director
Thank
Lee.
you, Director Lee. Director, that's great. And I have a question from Councillor Cornfield.
Good. I'm sorry, I'm having all kinds of problems today with my machine. Anyway, my question to Strathcona, I'm turning this darn thing off. Hang on a sec. My question was regarding an update on the project funding.
Project funding for what?
For the Strathcona Gardens Recreate project.
If I can talk on that, that will be on the agenda for the Strathcona Gardens Commission later this afternoon, and will be on the next board report.
Thank you, Director Adams. Okay, so on receipt, is there any other discussion or question? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. Thank you. We have no extraterritorial reports. On to M, staff reports, a development permit application for Salmon Point.
I have a written motion, I believe, that the staff report be received. CAO's report be received.
Okay, and a second? Thank you, Gerald. Is there any discussion on receipt? Seeing none?
Only to say that my APC and my whole area are very excited about the plans that are being put forward for the new Salmon Point Pub and Restaurant, and we're really looking forward to it reopening.
Okay, thank you, Director Lee.
I'd like to comment regarding that application.
Okay, certainly. Director Davis?
Yeah, I didn't really see any mention. Well, I saw a mention of the footprint, but no mention of the elevation, and I thought that was a bit of an oversight. Like maybe I missed it because it was a pretty lengthy document. Is the building proposed to be high enough above sea level to withstand a meter of sea level rise? Is my only question.
Director Lee?
I believe that the current breakwater and the level of the land that the restaurant's being built on is about 15 or 20 feet above sea level, above the highest tide. It's very high up.
Okay, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So on receipt, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposed, I will call that carried. On to Part B, Director Lee.
Move Part B, that the development permit be approved and that the corporate officer be authorized to issue the permit.
Seconded by Director Wally. Thank you very much. Is there any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those opposed? Seeing none, I'll see that carried. Thank you very much. I will move on to number 2, the request for subdivision frontage for Henrik.
Move receipt of CAO's report.
Thank you. Second, Director Colburn, thank you very much. And is there any discussion?
This went through my advisory commission and electoral area services, and the approval was contingent upon the little point of land in the last phrase of the recommendation being returned to Crown on the Woods Creek. So that's all good. It's all been really carefully gone over.
Thank you. And I believe that Aniko wishes to speak. Aniko, did you wish to speak to this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing further to add unless there's additional questions from the board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So on receipt, if there's no other comments, I will call the question. All those opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. And on to Part B, Director Lee.
Move B, that in accordance with Section 12-2 of the Local Government Act, the board approve frontage relief from the required 10 meters to 3.7% for the 10% to 3.7% for the proposed remainder lot shown on the plan of subdivision attached to the staff report dated February 26, 2020, subject to the small point of land that transgresses the Woods Creek being returned to Crown.
Thank you very much, and seconded by Director Colburn. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing nobody opposed, I will call that carried. Thank you. On to number 3, which is the Community Works Fund Linnea Farm Society application. Can I get a motion to receive? Moved by Director Unger, seconded by Director Anderson. Thank you very much. On receipt, is there any discussion? Okay, I'm sorry that I've got my thing going off all over the place here.
Charlie,
Director Anderson.
Thank you. There was a discussion of this matter at the Electoral Area Services Committee, and I was able to have a meeting with staff afterwards, which helped me clarify a number of matters. And what became clear to me was not clear to me in the reading of the staff report, and that's that the primary concern that UBCM had with this was that what was being proposed was not a service that is traditionally delivered by local government. And I think that warrants some further investigation and conversation with the applicant. The applicant didn't have an opportunity to speak with staff or UBCM at all before this report came forward to the board. And so I'm not at this moment, I'm happy to have discussion, but I would like to move that we just defer this to the October board so that this is the last month has not been the time to really dig into it with everything else going on. But that we just give the applicant a little bit of time to discuss this with staff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we are just on receipt. I have Director Cornfield.
There, thank you, Chair. Maybe it's through the staff. If it's a registered charity, which I saw in their report, why is it considered privately owned?
I can answer that. So privately owned, like individuals can have registered charities. That's not unusual. So, but that's not, I wouldn't call that the crux of the matter here, that whether it's a registered charity or not. There's many issues that are resolved around this application. One of them being what Director Anderson alluded to, but there's many others. So, but it isn't unusual for private individuals to have registered charities.
Okay, and then the my two comments are One is on page 8 of 66 in the report, and it refers to Director Anderson's March 4th, 2019 letter. And it makes a statement that the environmental benefits of greenhouse gas reduction through discontinued use of the wood-fired furnace. And wood-fired furnaces don't produce greenhouse gases. They are part of the current energy cycle. And I noticed on page 10 of 66, when looking at them and evaluating in the bullet, environmental bullet, it makes a statement under the environmental section that with the greenhouse gas emissions most heavily weighted. And that's not the way energy and greenhouse gas is work. So.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Director Cornfield. I have nobody else on the speakers list, so I'm going to call the motion on receipt, which is all directors. All those in favor? Or sorry, is there anybody opposed?
I'm opposed.
Thank you, Director Cornfield. Only one opposed. I will call receipt carried. On to B, if I can get somebody to move B.
So Michelle, Chair, I put in the chat move deferral to October board. My intention was just to defer receipt in the whole matter, but I would like that to be on the floor.
I don't have anything on the board. I don't have anything on the floor to defer at this particular point, Director Anderson. So let's get the motion on the floor.
So moved.
Second.
And second, thank you, Director Wally. Okay, so it's on the floor. I will entertain the motion for deferral from Director Anderson. Do I have a seconder? And I just need clarification from the CAO, as this is all electoral areas only. Does the seconder have to be an electoral area director?
Tom, would you? I don't think so, but Tom, can you clarify? Voters are all director.
Try to get my screen. There we go. Yes, if I could, Madam Chair, I would say that that any director could vote on this particular motion.
Okay.
It is a procedural motion. The motion to defer, I'm speaking of, not the motion to approve or not approve, but the motion to defer, I think, is a board vote.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted clarification from. Okay, so the motion on the floor right now is to defer the denial of the application for Linnea Farms, and I believe I have a seconder. I am going to call the question on deferral. Is there anybody opposed?
Director Lee.
No, type it in chat, please.
Oh, sorry, okay. Type a new message. Sorry, I'm really gormless on this thing.
No, you're fine. Everyone, Claire.
Everyone votes on deferral, Claire. Okay, is staff getting all of these?
Yeah, there's just waiting for everyone to have a chance to vote in. We have 5 opposed at this point. 6 opposed.
Okay, so
Just give everyone a second here. Tom, could you check? I don't believe Martin's, oh, it doesn't matter anyways,
Okay.
Charlie opposed. So
all right. So our numbers are saying that I've got a majority that are opposed. So the motion to defer, it fails. The original motion is back on the floor that the application for community works funding for Linnea Farm Society for the installation of the heat pump be denied. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak to this? Okay, I'll call the question. Is there anybody opposed to the denial of the application? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody opposed. That motion carries. Thank you very much. On to number 4, request for financial assistance.
Madam Chair, how do could I have just a pause here to find out from John Schmooland, how do I speak to everybody? Like, I could do chat and send in one little message, but how do you communicate? How would I communicate with the whole board?
I'll let Director Schmooland work with you with that.
Okay.
Or Director Schmooland, I'm sorry, I just elevated your position, John, sorry. Okay, so we are on number 4, which is requests for the financial assistance from electoral area C. If I can get somebody to move that, please.
I don't believe.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on receipt? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. On to part B. Can I get somebody to move part B, please? That the board approve grants and aid paid to the electoral area C grant and aid budget as follows. Move, Director Colburn, thank you. Second. Director Moglov, thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Okay, I am not seeing any comments. Yes, Martin, you are being seen. With no questions, I will call the question on part B. All of those opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. On to number 5, which is the request for economic development funding for electoral area C. If I get somebody to move that, please. Mark or Gerald, thank you. And a seconder. Thank you, Director Adam.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Director Cornfield?
Can somebody answer me, how is funding the Quadra Children's Center and the Campbell River Museum considered economic development? Seeing as how this is economic development funding on Quadra.
Okay, Director or David.
Yeah, thanks. So unfortunately, Director Abram and Director McKenzie are not here. This came out of a motion from Director Abram, which he has funding within economic development, and it was his motion. So I'm a little challenged to explain his philosophy behind that, but there is funding within this service function for it.
Okay.
Would, if I can just, Madam Chair, would it not have been better to transfer money from this fund to the other one to keep it consistent? It's a grant and aid is what it is, and hardly constitutes economic development. And so leaving it in economic development would paint an unfair financial picture at the year end in terms of the money that's being contributed. So I won't be supporting, I'll support receipt, but I certainly won't support item B.
Okay, thank you. Director Anderson.
Thank you. Just in response to Director Cornfield's question, I've asked, it's been a number of years, but a number of years ago I asked often about these matters, and my memory is that there's really not a definition in the economic development service on Quadra about what constitutes economic development. It's a very rare economic development service that essentially acts like a grant and aid without an economic development organization that it's run through. So I think it's historically a problematic one.
Okay, thank you. So on receipt, If I have no other speakers, which I don't seem to, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. On to part B, please, if I could get somebody to move that. Gerald, thank you very much. Brenda, thank you very much. Is there any discussion?
I sent a message, but I don't know if anyone got it. I said, I believe that Director Abram considered both of these items tourism support, and it is totally appropriate to put it under economic development.
Okay, thank you very much for your clarification on his thought process.
So Director Lee, if I can just interject, Director Lee, we're seeing and hearing you. So all your comments are there on chat. We can see them. So you know how to use chat. You're doing a great job of it. So it's easier for the chair if people aren't speaking out of order, but in using chat, and trust you, we're seeing it. Yeah, we're seeing it all in chat.
I've been trying to get hold of John Schmulin because I want to know how to like chat with all the participants.
You are.
Oh, I am. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
Okay. So I'm just going to remind directors to make sure that they're on mute unless they're speaking as well. Just a friendly reminder as we go through. And if there is no other discussion on B, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call this carried. Sorry, Director Cornfield, I do see that. Seeing one opposed, it still carries. On to N, which is bylaws, bylaw number 366 and 367, OCP amendment and rezoning. If I can get somebody to move receipt, please.
Move receipt of the report from the Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you, and seconded by Director Wally. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I will call the motion on receipt. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none opposed, I will call that carried. On to part B, which is all directors. If I can get somebody to move B.
That the report on the public hearing for bylaw 366 and 367 together with supporting documents be received, with all supporting documents be received.
Thank you, and seconded by Director Adams. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll move to question. Everybody opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. On to part C, which is all electoral area directors. If I can get somebody to move third reading, please.
I'm going to be voting against the motion if it gets made.
I need somebody to move and second it first, please.
Can I move it for discussion and then vote against it? Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you. So is there discussion on C?
Did you get a seconder?
Yep, Director Wally seconded.
Okay. I'll discuss it. The public hearing was overwhelmingly opposed to the application, except for the applicant and the applicant's families and a few friends. But the gallery was packed at the hearing, very full of people, and people have had enough of industrial activity in their residential neighborhood, and they do not want the board to approve this.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all electoral areas only. I'll call the question. Anybody opposed?
Yes, Director Lee.
Director Lee is opposed. I'd prefer if you would do that in your chat function, Director Lee.
Sorry.
Director Wally is opposed and Director Anderson is opposed. So that motion fails. That means that we don't proceed to anything else. So we are done with bylaw number 366 and 367. Thank you very much.
Do we not have to do 367? No.
Just 1 second.
367, at least a third reading. If that fails, we'll have.
Okay, I'm sorry, we're just passing. That's 366. Okay, so we go to E.
I'll move it for discussion, E.
Thank you.
That
And a
the
second,
bylaw
Mr.
367
Wally.
third.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any discussion?
Same comments as before.
Thank you. Okay, on E, which is bylaw 367, be given third reading. I'll call the question. Those opposed?
I am. I'm going to put it in the chat.
Okay. Director Anderson is opposed. Director Wally is opposed. Director Lee is opposed. That will fail, which takes that off the table, and we have no more recourse. Director Colburn.
Hi there. I'm just process-wise finding this really, really hard to do up here when people aren't using the chat. I'm getting a lot of feedback, and so it's very hard for me with my lack of internet connection. When people are just jumping in and then there's two people talking, it's just really, really awkward. So I just wanted to mention that for us folks who have rather bad internet. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Colburn. That just reminds us that there's people that might not have the same kind of bandwidth as everybody else. So please use your chat function as much as you can and mute your microphone unless you are talking. If I am moving too quickly and people are not having enough time, please send it to me in the chat and I will certainly slow down to make sure that everybody has the ability to get in what they need to get in. Okay, so we are now, oh, now I've lost my spot. Sorry, we are on number 2, bylaw number 381, the public library financing agreement. If I get somebody to move that, please. Okay, thank you, Director Wally. I need a seconder. Okay, Director Adams, thank you very much. Director Moglov has a question on receipts.
Thanks. Yeah, I just have a question on this one in terms of process. This authorization isn't the actual borrowing. It's just it's the authorization to go ahead with borrowing at another time. So when there's another opportunity for the board to consider the actual borrowing, and the reason I'm asking, of course, is the whole COVID-19 financial situation. So I just want to get clarity that we're not going ahead next week to borrow this money.
Yeah, okay, I'll interject. No, we're not going ahead tomorrow to borrow the money. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. But it does come back to the board if and when we go ahead with the actual borrowing.
Yeah, so what the library has asked us, this money for funding the library and the borrowing is within their financial plan. So, but they're not allowed to borrow money. So we'll borrow on behalf, and then we'll have to go to likely an AAP to do that. So that'll be brought back to the board, but this is just processed this time, and we're not borrowing any money right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Moglov. Is there any other questions on receipt? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll consider that carried. On to part B, if I could get directors to move. Okay, Director Adams, thank you. And Director Moglov, thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. On to part C. Director Adams and Director Unger, thank you very much. Is there any discussion on part C? Seeing no discussion, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. On to number 3, bylaw number 383 and 384. If I can get somebody to move receipt, please. Thank you, Director Kerr. Second, Director Davis. Thank you very much. Is there discussion on receipt? Director Anderson.
Thank you. I noticed in the staff report, of course, there's discussion about going to public hearing, and that's not showing up on the agenda. But my question through the staff is just is there any best information around what to do legislatively in these times? I'm hearing from all the officials that we could be into social distancing for many, many months. If that's the case, is there discussion about alternate legislation that allows us to hold public hearings just by submission of written submission, or how do we intend to not have these stalled forever? Thank you.
To our CAO, please.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, there's been a lot of discussion, and there is the ability actually right now to hold public hearings. You can, have them in large spaces with distancing. You can have less people. You can have write-in submissions. So there is the ability right now, and I think at this small window of time, everyone has just canceled public hearings. But if this goes on for months and months, then we'll have to look at other ways to hold public hearings rather than just have a whole bunch of people in a room. And but there is a number of ways we can actually do it within the current legislation and meeting the province's emergency response. So we can do it. Just right now we said let's give it a pause, and maybe it's a moot point in a month or so.
And I would just hope that we don't let this slip for more than a month or two, and that these be brought back for the board's consideration about how to do either in an electronic or spaced out way relatively soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Adams.
Thank you. We are having weekly teleconferences with all the mayors and chairs of RDs province-wide, with Minister Robinson from the Minister of Municipalities and Housing. And regarding the public hearing question, we will take the direction from the province. And I think that's what we're all waiting for, is to, so that we don't have individual communities doing different things all over the place. And the minister is very, very much aware and has provided notice that they are looking into this and will advise.
Thank you very much for your comments there. Yeah, those meetings, I think most people will notice from the bulletins, are happening on Thursdays, and I try to capture some of the points in the bulletin as we go through. And like Director Adams said, it has been a topic of conversation on all 3 that we have sat on so far, and will probably be again next Thursday when we have our next meeting. So with that, I see nobody else that would like to speak on receipt, which is all directors. So I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. On to Part B, please. If I can get somebody to move Part B. Director Wally, and I need a second. Director Davis, thank you very much. On bylaw 383 being introduced and read the first time, is there any discussion? This is all electoral areas only. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All opposed? Seeing no one opposed, I'll call Part B carried. On to Part C. Director Wally, Director Anderson, thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Seeing none on second reading, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call Part B carried. On to, oh, sorry, that was C. On to D. Bylaw 384, Director Anderson, thank you. And a second. Thank you, Director Wally. Is there any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question on D. All opposed? Seeing none opposed, I'll call that carried. And on to the last one, E. Move E. Thank you, Director Lee. Director Wally, thank you. And is there any discussion? Seeing none, all electoral areas only. Anybody opposed? I will call that carried. Thank you very much. On to number 4, which is bylaw 387, the rezoning application for Don River Log. If I can get somebody to move that, please. Okay, I have Director Lee and Director Kerr. Thank you very much. And I have a question from Director Cornfield. Director Cornfield.
There, I was just muted.
Yeah.
Why was there no referral to the city of Campbell River, considering that this property is on our boundaries and borders are part of risk zone B in our watershed? And we've had past problems in wastewater compliance with the sewer city regulation, or not the city.
I'm sorry, Director Cornfield, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm having difficulty today. We've had past problems there, which showed up with our watershed advisory committee, which is made up, and I believe Director Lee was there at the time, with wastewater compliance under the sewer system regulation as noted by Island Health. And so I just wondered why no one had chosen to refer it to the city when it's our obligation, and as purveyor of water, we're accountable for the quality of water that comes through.
All right, thank you. And I'm being told that Aniko can answer, please.
Thank you to the chair, to the board. I can't specifically answer as to why the city of Campbell River did not receive a referral on this application. The referral list went out to the environmental monitoring branch and VHA. The list was approved by the Electoral Area Services Committee prior to the referrals going out. So I apologize if it was an oversight on behalf of planning staff to not refer to the city of Campbell River on this matter.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I just had a note from Director Lee saying that she had asked staff to refer to the city and First Nations and others. So I'll give that back to staff. I'm not sure if there's any other comment on that.
Thank you.
To our CAO.
Other than we can we still refer, Aniko?
Just give me one quick second here. I'm just going to check the referral list. One moment, please.
And just a reminder to all directors, we are still on receipt, which will be voted on all directors. The rest will be all electoral areas only.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize for the delay. We could still refer out to the city of Campbell River. I did double check that the referral did go out to all First Nations, in addition to the agency list contained in the staff report, which did include VHA and the Ministry of Environment and a number of others.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other discussion on receipt?
Yes.
Director Cornfield?
In that case, would it be appropriate to move that this item be sent to the city of Campbell River for comment.
To our CAO.
Aniko?
Yes, we could do that, Madam Chair.
Okay, does it need a motion, I guess was what I was asking.
I could just take it as staff direction through the chair and the CAO.
Okay, do we need to defer item B then? Or do we defer this at A? Otherwise we carry on and then there's no sense doing any of the,
Yeah.
May I please speak to this?
Okay, go ahead, Director Lee.
Director Lee. Okay, I believe that I did make motions to refer this to the city of Campbell River, to the archaeological branch, to First Nations, Weewakai, and to Flinrod. Flinrod is in process of responding regarding the riparian area setback and protection requirements. But I would be happy to resubmit those referrals to the board, those four, to the city of Campbell River regarding water supply, to the Weewakai concerning their interests, to the archaeological branch, and to Flinrod regarding the riparian area.
Okay, so we're just on receipt right now. So I would suggest that we move to receive, go on to part B, and if we choose to defer, then the deferral motion would be best happen there.
yeah. My
Okay,
concern,
Director Cornfield.
my concern with that, Madam Chair, is that we only vote on A.
That's correct.
We have no vote on B.
Okay, through to our staff for a procedural question here, please. I'm sorry, I'm getting somebody, it would be electoral areas. I agree with that. I'm trying to figure out what the best procedural piece is to move forward here. If I can get staff to please answer the question.
Okay, I think it would be simplest to defer A, and then once we've done the referral, as Aniko says, the only referral that hasn't been done is the city of Campbell River. So if we refer A until we've done the deferral and then bring it back.
Okay, Director Cornfield, did you wish to do that?
I would move that item A be deferred until consultation or with referral to the city of Campbell River has been completed.
Okay, do I have a seconder on deferral?
I would like to amend by adding.
Okay, seconder from Director Moglov. Thank you. And on deferral, Director Anderson.
Just to the timeliness of it, I put a question in the chat earlier. I'm not seeing why we can't do both. If B is simply about referring back to staff, that's not moving forward. Could that not happen at the same time as referral to the city and have as much information come back to the board next time as possible?
Okay, thank you. Is there any other to our CAO?
Again, we could. I think the simplest thing is if we defer A, do the referral and bring the whole thing back.
Okay, thank you very much. And that is what is on the floor. Is there any other discussion on deferral? I don't think you need to amend the deferral, Director Lee. We will just move forward and those will be done by staff under your direction.
Thank you.
Is there any other? Director Colburn is asking about timeline to staff.
Well, we can defer to, geez, what's the calendar? The next meeting. I mean, the referral will, yeah, go out, as Aniko says, tomorrow. So we can defer to okay, Aniko says 30 days.
Okay, so to our May meeting then?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification. Is there any other discussion on deferral? Seeing none, I'll call the question on deferral of receipt. Is there anyone opposed? Thank you. Director Adams is opposed. Is there anyone else opposed? Director Anderson is opposed. Seeing 2 opposed, I will call it carried. So that is deferred until our May meeting. Thank you very much. On to bylaw number 5, bylaw number 391, Kwathiaski Cove Sewer Service Loan Authorization. Thank you, Director Kerr. Can I get a seconder? Director Wally, thank you very much. Is there any discussion on receipt? Okay, to our CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, it's unfortunate that Director Abram or Mackenzie isn't here, but just I know there was a comment earlier about, should we be borrowing money? This is related to a grant application that we put into the province, and the province said, unless you have third reading of a loan authorization bylaw, your application is going to get thrown out. And they gave us a timeline. So this is only third reading, and it's just showing that the province that we will support our portion of the grant if we get it. We don't know how, but if we don't support it with third reading, then the application is a moot point.
Thank you for the clarification. Is there any other discussion on receipt? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anybody opposed? Seeing none, I'll consider that carried. On to part B, which is the bylaw be given first reading. Moved by Director Colburn, second by Director Kerr. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on part B. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none opposed, I'll call that carried. On to part C, I have Director Unger moving C, Director Colburn seconding. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? No one opposed. I'll consider part C carried. And on to part D, please. Moved by Director Moglov, second by Director Wally. And once again, is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no one opposed, I'll consider that carried. On to correspondence, and I believe that Director Lee has asked to pull number 1. So I will accept a motion to move number 2 through number 5.
Move 2 to 5.
Okay, and Director Anderson wishes to pull number 4, so that is to move 2, 3, and 5. Seconded by Director Wally. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion on those? Okay, Director Moglov's screen, I'm not sure what you're...
Tom, can you...
move the screen. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll call the question on correspondence 2, 3, and 5. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call correspondence 2, 3, and 5 carried. And on to number 1, Director Lee, if you would like to...
Move receipt.
Okay. Second. Thank you, Director Unger and Director Lee. You wanted to speak to this?
Yeah, well, after receipt, I'd like to move that the SRD renew its membership in UBCM.
Okay, thank you.
That'll be a subsequent.
Okay, thank you. So on receipt, is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those opposed? Okay, I'll consider that receipt carried and on to Director Lee for a
Move that
subsequent.
That the SRD renew its membership in UBCM.
Can I get a second, please? Thank you, Director Kerr. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? I'll consider that carried. Thank you very much, Director Lee.
Okay.
On to number 4, Director Anderson.
Thank you. I'm certainly not intimately familiar with the Canberra Foundation, but I am with the Cortez Foundation here, and I just think this is a relatively thoughtful request of us to be a collaborator and ally in some form. They're suggesting that we contribute some funds as other levels of, I believe, government have done in order to support some of the nonprofit gaps in the community.
Okay, can I get you to put the motion on the floor, please, before we have the discussion?
I'm sorry, so moved.
Sorry to interrupt. I
Okay.
need to declare my conflict, and I've sent 3 messages to declare my conflict so that it's on the record that I'm declaring my conflict of interest because I'm on the board of directors of the Community Foundation. I'm going to unplug my camera, my microphone, etc., and someone could please chat me when I can come back. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, Director Anderson.
No, sorry to get ahead of myself, so move receipt.
Thank you. In a second. Thank you, Director Kerr. Go ahead, Director Anderson.
So I don't know that we should do anything on this particular call because we're just figuring this out and it's all new, but I would like to suggest that this be deferred to the next meeting so we can have a little bit more time to think about this, and I might share this with the Cortez Foundation, and perhaps there's other foundations in the regional district. I think this is worthy of our consideration.
Okay, so right now the motion to receipt's on the floor, so if we want to do anything else, we would do a subsequent. So is there any other discussion on receipt? Director Lee. Director Lee, did you have a comment on receipt?
I think this is this may refer to the assistance to be given to the people burned out of 9th and Dogwood. And I would like to have that clarified. And if it is relating to them, then I think it would be appropriate to look into the our emergency funds through Sean Koopman's department.
So my thought process on this is it relates to COVID-19, not necessarily the burnt apartment, but I will go to staff if they have any other thought process on this.
Is Director Lee making a motion?
No, she just wants clarification on what this is for.
On what the request is for?
Yeah.
Sorry, Director Lee, could you explain what you need?
I would like to know what $30,000 would be going towards, since they've had an emergency fire on Dogwood and 2nd. And some of the organizations that the Campbell River Community Foundation are funding, like the Kind Hearts organization, I believe they're called, maybe they're involved in that. The people that got burned out last week have another week in the hotel, and then they don't know what's going to happen to them. And I would say that that's a more appropriate thing to use our emergency funding on, if we're going to go to Sean Koopman's department, than anything else.
Okay, so currently we are on receipt, and I think I understand now, but what I heard from Director Anderson is that after this, she may have a subsequent, that this is to go back to staff so that we can have a larger discussion and a report from them at our next meeting. Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Community Foundation had a target for $100,000, which was money that they started with a $30,000 contribution from the foundation. And then the money itself, when it's raised, will go to a wide variety of organizations. This is not focused on the fire, on what happens with the people there. However, having said that, the organizations that would be supporting it are all part and parcel of the funding envelope available from the Campbell River Foundation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Director Cornfield. So we are on receipt. Is there any other discussion on receipt?
Are they looking for grants and aid, or what are they looking for? Are they looking for money from our emergency fund? I just need to know what they want it for. Everybody wants money for COVID. I don't know why. You know, I don't know what it's going to be used for.
Okay, so I think clarification should be coming up here soon, but right now we are strictly on receipt. Is there any other discussion on receipt? Director Anderson, did you have a question?
I did, just if it's appropriate through the chair to other directors, is anyone else aware of other community foundations in the SRD boundary other than Campbell River and Cortez? Because what I'm thinking would be appropriate is to just defer this for a couple of weeks and reach out to other foundations, letting them know we're having this discussion, because I think it's a very worthwhile one.
Thank you very much, Director Anderson. Director Adams.
Thank you. Just to remind everybody that there are so many different volunteer and support organizations in Campbell River. And what the Campbell River Community Foundation is doing is trying to coordinate it under one funding umbrella so that we are not getting multiple requests for funding. So by contributing to the Campbell River Community Foundation, they are working with all of the agencies, whether it's the fire or the homeless or other things that are all related to the current COVID pandemic situation. And I do think it's an appropriate place to allocate funding at whatever amount we choose to do, and then leave it in their hands to work with all of the organizations in the community to find the right place and the right need. Deferring this will only extend the issue for those that are really in need right now, and have been for a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. So procedurally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the question on receipt and then look for a subsequent to send back to staff so that they can do a report, and we can look at this again at our next meeting to see which direction we would like to go. So seeing no other comments on receipt, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll see receipt carried. And I'm looking for a subsequent from one of the directors.
Move that the issue be referred back to staff for a report on where the money would come from and what the money would be used for.
Okay,
which of our functions would it come from?
Okay, thank you. And that was seconded by Director Cornfield. Is there any more discussion?
Yes.
Director Anderson?
Sorry, just a friendly, and that other community foundations in the region be reached out to.
Thank you. Does staff have that captured?
Yeah, I think there's plenty in the chat there for the motion. Okay,
thank you very much. Is there any other discussion? Okay, I will call the question. Oh, can I speak? Director Colburn, certainly.
And I'm just hoping that it would be in response to this letter, a direction to the staff where those funds would come from, if those would come from our emergency funding, and that would be included at the direction of our emergency prepared, or our, sorry, Mr. Koopman.
Okay. Thank you to staff.
Yeah, I think we've got it. There's plenty in chat, and I think we understand what a staff report will look like.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to the subsequent motion? Seeing no takers, I'm going to call the question on the motion that's on the floor. Is there anyone opposed? Opposed to referral. Okay, thank you, Director Adams. Director Wally is opposed. Director Davis is opposed. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 opposed, but I will still call the motion carried. Thank you. On to our last piece, which is part P, which is members' reports. If I can get somebody to move Director Abrams' Oceans Protections Plan newsletter report. Thank you, Director Unger, Director Kerr. Thank you very much. Can somebody call Director Moglove back?
I just did. She's got her camera and her voice muted, so I just chatted her back. I don't know any other way.
Okay.
I'm back. I'm back. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Moglove. The motion on the floor is Director Abrams' Ocean Protection Plan newsletter. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none opposed, I'll call that carried. We have no management report, new business, closed section. So I will move termination. Director Wally and Director Lee, thank you very much. Is there anybody that wants to discuss that? No. Okay, so I will call the motion. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Thank you very much.